Hey y'all, it's Danielle from Black Business Boom, and we're trying this again because technology was not allowing me to be great. But I'm really excited. I wanted to make sure that we started over so you all can learn all about Tammy Gordon and your legacy tour. So, welcome, Tammy. How are you today?
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you for having me. Then, we're navigating the tech stuff today, but I'm glad to
Yeah.
be in space and community with you.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to have you and to be connected with you. Tammy has been doing some really important work and really supporting the culture over the last several years. I'll let you give a little intro, Tammy, and tell us a little bit about the work you've been doing.
Sure. I'm so grateful for serendipitous and aligned connections like you, Danielle, because I've been doing some work locally in Nashville for the last 2 years. And my best friend from second grade is friends with a woman who's in Nashville, Jess, who made the connection. And I get really excited when things sort of naturally come together like that. That my background in general is in access work and trying to get Black folks, brown folks from the community access to things that there are barriers for. And so I spent the majority of my career doing pre-high school, college, and career development, creating access to jobs and opportunity for folks of color who wouldn't have them otherwise. And I think over time that's evolved and showed up in a lot of different ways. I'm coming out of a 2 year stint as the lead for Blavity's nonprofit, which was really focused on Black entrepreneurship and getting Black folks access to capital and people and connections and just space to be together and see one another and share successes and struggles in a safe space. I love reading. I love history. I'm a public history student. I will graduate next month. So I will be a public historian come next month, which is like crazy to say. And the path now has sort of taken all of this work that I've done in access and community building and creating programs and experiences for people of color and really specifically Black people to say, like, what is our experience with who we are and our history and ourselves, and why are we or not connecting to those spaces. And I was in Nashville a couple of years ago and ended up at a plantation and was just like, I've never been to one before, so let me go. And I went to this space, and the transformation that I felt within myself, stepping onto grounds where my ancestors were, and stepping into this space that has been really faux pas and, just prohibited, right? Like we just don't go back to that. That's not something my family talked about. It was really special. And I've been to 14 spaces since that first plantation visit across the diaspora in the Caribbean, the US, in Barcelona, just trying to find more of myself and our ancestors' footprints and evidence of their lives. And every time I go, I realize that while they might be telling the story of our ancestors, they're not talking to me. Right? They're not talking to a Black person who might have relationship or kinship with the folks that are there. They're talking to a majority who they're trying to cultivate what happened and like naming that this really did happen. Slavery, we didn't make that up. It's not like so long ago. They're talking to this audience, not me. And so I've stepped into this work now, trying to marry the business that my husband and I go, the work that I've done over time to say, what if we were the focal point of these spaces? What if there were experiences of our history that were designed for the unique needs and feelings and emotions that we'll have in mind? What would that look like? And so I was really starting with myself and just like, what was I missing when I went to these spaces over a dozen times? And as I do that, can I invite more people into that? And if we did, the theory of change that I'm holding is, what would we think is possible? Like what barriers would we remove from ourselves, from our spirit, from our familial connections? Like if we gave slavery and all of the negativity back to the enslaved, and we carried the power of our ancestors and the things that they created despite their enslavement and the love that they chose despite the circumstance that they were in, would we show up bolder? Like, would we come to Black Business Boom and like be audacious with the things that we're creating and the businesses that we dream up and the lives that we consider. And so it's really this piece of a larger puzzle that I hope, collaborations between an organization like yours and Greenwood Seneca and mine sort of bring this larger ripple effect of what would be possible for Black folks if we just like held on to our dopeness and held on to all the things that are great about us and let go of some of the things that are intrinsically harmful to us by way of conditioning and we live.
I love it. Yeah, I think that it's so important that we start to have the conversations and the exploration for sure. I recently visited Dakar, Senegal, and the House of Slaves. And
Mm.
while there was, of course, a lot of emotions in that visit, it was also at the same time empowering to do. And so I think many times we have avoided these spaces because of fear, because of emotion, because we, think, I don't feel like crying in this place. I don't want to, all of those things. So I love that you are pulling the positivity out of what you've experienced in visiting these spaces. And so tell us, what can folks expect? There is an event that's coming up in a couple weeks here
Yeah.
in Nashville, led by Your Legacy Tours. And so I would love to know, like, what can folks expect from the day?
Yeah, and it's such a great question. I'm going to tell you, when this concept came to mind, my mom was the first one to be like, you have to explain what will be different. You have to create expectations for folks. And so know that my mom's been pushing me on how to make sure that we share this because it's important. And I will just sort of address the point that you just made, Danielle, around we want to extrapolate positivity and the relationship that we could potentially have with our ancestors, but we also want it to be true. Like, we need to also know the facts of what happened. Slavery was horrific, and there were awful and terrible things that others did to our ancestors. And there are spaces where we can learn about that. And if you go on any tour of any of these spaces, you will hear about the traumatic things that happened, right? So I just want to name that it's not absent the full truth of all of the things that went on, but what is often not talked about. And so to get into the experience is, what if we held the ancestors at the center of the narrative that we're talking about? And so our work is really, it starts months before the experience we invite folks to. We work in partnership with the historic sites to say, like, y'all are the gatekeepers of information that we're not going to get anywhere else. It's not written in books. There are no documents, and guarded or safe kept in this very specific place. So I need you, I need you to give me access to the information I would not otherwise have. I can only trace back grandparents up to 2 grades, right? So I can't get much farther than that. My family didn't talk about it. And my great grandparents passed before I was old enough and smart enough to start asking the questions at family reunions of, like, tell me about your life. Everybody who's here, like, ask your elders the questions, because they're not asked about this information. And they're also gatekeepers of it. Mm-hmm. We work with the gatekeeper. Like, I need you to think about, if a Black person was coming here, do they want to hear, oh, this family, the Jeffersons, the Washingtons, da 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 da, and the enslaved? Like, I need you to flip that and give name to who the enslaved are. So Sally, Jeffrey, Lewis, they were here, and they worked the land, but also they lived in that building back there. They walked probably 100 times a day between this building and that building. So there is evidence of their life in this walk path. And so what we do at first is help the site just repurpose the stories they already have for an audience they're not typically with. We don't go to spaces, right? And of Black people spend their money in museums and spaces of history. We spend a lot of money. And we spend a lot of money on tourism, but we don't do it in spaces of history. And there's a reason for that. It's not safe for us. This is not like a space that's cultivated with us in mind. So we do the work to cultivate that. So, like, I want to just offer that there's some trust and safety in how we cultivate. Then when folks come, what I want it to feel like is, one, safe for my emotion, my body, that you've taken all of those things into consideration, that I'm making this decision to come. And then what does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it sound like? What music is playing? How am I greeted when I come here? Are my trepidations and emotions acknowledged when I set foot onto this grounds? Are my ancestors present physically, spiritually, as I walk onto a space like this? And so we build in really intentional components of programming that speak to all of the senses. We want you to feel a certain way. We want to smell certain things. We want you to listen to certain types of music. And then we very specifically name and call in that in partnership with our ancestors, and that we're walking alongside them as we learn the history of this space. Some of it to be true and awful, and we have to name that, but also like we're going to name names and people and birth dates and give you access to things that maybe you wouldn't have. And so the goal is that we pique curiosity. End of the day, we want folks to come to feel safe that they are there and made the choice to be there, to honor that decision, and then make them curious, to ask the question, to like push the docent and the interpreter to talk a bit more about Sally. Like, tell me more about her. What else do you know? Because when they're just named as enslaved, you don't know what else to ask. What do I ask you about that person? Tell me what surnames are here, right? Is McGee part of this plantation site? Is Gordon part of it? How can I trace that back to all of the stops that this enslaver might have made from where they were dropped off, more likely in the Carolinas or in Louisiana? How'd they get to Tennessee? And how can we make some of those ancestral connections? And then we're working in partners with organizations like African Ancestry is a big partner for us. And so they're going to equip us with some tools and resources and kits as a way to connect the dots across the diaspora. So that's been a really important partnership for us. And then Bridget Jones, who's local to Nashville, and her family has roots in Tennessee. Like, she's one of the experts that's coming in to speak about both her familial connection, but also the space she holds as a woman who works with enslaved sites as a full-time, like, chosen career job, and the reality of her being a Black woman who contends with the realities of being a Black woman. And so those are the pieces. How they come together, we hope, is some of the sauce and the magic that folks experience when they are there and together. But really, it's this idea of like, be invited, feel invited, come, and then leave curious, leave more curious than harmed, and then come back to another space or seek out another space, and continue to do it in a way and push for a way that is done that sort of honors the needs or the unique needs that we have coming in and visiting this kind of space.
I love it. I'm really excited. The tour is on the 25th of July.
Yes,
So less than 2 weeks out now. Time is sure flying.
wow.
But it's going to be an amazing day. I feel confident that it will be enlightening, empowering, all of those things. That's what I look to take away from the experience. So I'm really excited about it. I have dropped the Eventbrite link in the caption, so you can hit that Eventbrite link to learn more about the event. Tammy, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you feel like folks need to know about your legacy tours or the event coming up in Nashville?
This is a heartfelt mission. This is something that I've felt called to do by kin in my line. And Gina Page, who's the president and founder of African Ancestry, she sort of summed up this in our last conversation together. It's just like, if we did nothing else, if there was no programming, there was no tour, what honor and homage would 50, 60, 70 of us just showed up to the lands where our ancestors were? Like, what would that mean to them? And so outside of the tickets, and I also want to offer anyone who comes through Black Business Boom, if you type in code, will discount your tickets. So anyone who comes in through you, Danielle, like, we just want you to be there. It's not about right now what it costs us to do that. This is a genuine invitation, and we would love to do that in community with folks who are local to Nashville, who like live this and are part of this community all of the time. And let's just show up and honor the ancestors by at least stepping foot where they were. And that's really the call to action and the invitation that I want to extend to folks.
Love it. And tell me what the code was again, Tammy.
Legacy, all capital letters,
Perfect.
no spaces, nothing fancy, just legacy, and it will discount your tickets.
Fantastic. I love it. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of you and proud of the work that you're
Thank you.
doing. Really excited that you've chosen Nashville to do this. So we
They
really,
called me.
yeah, now call me too. So I feel you. I feel you. But this was wonderful. Really excited. And I will see some of you all on the 25th at the tour. So, again, the link is in the caption. I'll also drop it in the comments when we finish up. And the code for discount is Legacy.
Yes,
Thank you
ma'am.
so
Yes,
much
thank
for
you.
joining me, Tammy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a wonderful